Welcome everyone to the Moisky News for February 13th, 2020. Today I want to talk about the watchdog Ofcom, who I had forgotten existed until it came up in Prime Minister's Questions, which by the way I streamed last night on this channel, link below, where Ofcom are being given more powers, new powers, where they can in fact force social media firms to act over harmful content. Up until recently, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, the list goes on, have widely been regarded as self-regulatory, with the company defending, most of them the companies that is, defending that their rules about taking down unacceptable content is pretty solid. But critics have said independent rules are needed to keep people safe, in its swag, in the sense that the internet needs policing cause me feels. This feels like a 2015 thing, and I don't like it. I don't like the idea of policing the internet, and the fact Boris has brought this forward means I have to rail on him for this terrible idea. I'm not a fan of the rules imposed by Twitter, because they are politically swayed, forcing people onto Gab, which is now a heavily right-wing social media platform, because they were forced off Twitter. I don't care for Snapchat because they're not okay with Dankula's balls. YouTube is a contradiction unto itself and is basically only interested in the ad revenue it makes, so it hammers the creators until they leave and go to sites like Vimeo and BitChute. Got this mug recently from BitChute for being a Subscribe Star patron of sorts for 6 months. Dead chuffed. I know nothing about TikTok, by the way, so I can't comment on it. And Facebook, while they have said one thing when it came to handling, let's say, politics, they have contradicted themselves on a number of times and occasions and even admitted they have done so. We might as well include Google to an extent, although does Google Plus still exist? No, I don't think it does. That didn't work out so well for you, did it? All of those companies have their own rules, and I don't agree with the majority of them, but they do firmly believe in free speech. What you consider to be harmful content is vague. It is nebulous. It is also, and quite obviously so, fairly subjective. It is at present unclear what penalties Ofcom can enforce to target what they deem to be violence, cyberbullying and child abuse. I say it is subjective because some people can be very hypersensitive to so much as a flick on the ear or being told that they really need to stop eating all the pies. The government has announced it is minded to grant these powers because Ofcom only regulate the media and the telecoms industry, not internet, air quotes here, safety. Oh, Boris, what are you doing? They're also expected, Ofcom that is, to minimise the risks of all of the aforementioned targets from appearing at all. This would include violence, terrorism, cyberbullying, child abuse. The list does go on, because we must protect everyone from this. I should point out, you know if something's child abuse because you can see Chris Hansen creeping into the image. Cyberbullying is a very vague term. Terrorism, again, what is it? Because you're going to have to be incredibly specific here. Are we going to say not just religious fanatics but also left and right wing? What about groups that are somehow protected? Are we going to actually do this properly? Which I don't agree with in the first place. And what about violence? What is violence? Not going to lie to you, I'm actually interested to see how they intend to frame this, or whether they're going to keep the nebulous terms presented in the BBC article linked down below. In many countries, social media platforms are permitted to regulate themselves as long as they adhere to local laws on illegal material. It's why Facebook bent over to China and India. And it's why YouTube blocked PewDiePie's bitch lasagna in India, so people wouldn't be offended by it when they realised he was referencing T-Series. You know, the biggest channel on YouTube. Totally not a massive multi-billion-pound conglomerate company that, I'm just going to stop there, it's not politics. In 2018, Germany introduced the NetzDG law, which states that social media platforms with more than 2 million registered German users have to review and remove illegal content within 24 hours of being posted or face fines up to €15 million. In Australia, They passed the Sharing of Abhorrent Violent Material Act in 2019, which introduced criminal penalties for social media companies, possible jail sentences for tech executives for up to 3 years, and financial penalties worth up to 10% of a company's global turnover. China, because they're the best at dealing with this, just block most Western tech giants, which include Twitter, Google and Facebook, even though I believe Facebook work with China anyway, with the state monitoring social media with their own sponsored social apps for politically sensitive content, but also for those social credit scores. We've got to get the pariahs out, haven't we? I should be clear. My view has always been the internet should be free for all to use, regardless. If someone commits an actual legitimate crime, then yes, of course, it is evidence against them. But I also believe that the companies that run these sites are well within their right to run them themselves. Those that say, yes, but we need somebody else just to regulate them. How do you regulate them? Notice here Germany has one set of laws and Australia has another and China just blocks it all. Because China was clever, yo. They got Steve Shives in. For those who don't know who Steve Shives is, check your Twitter. If you're blocked by him, that's Steve Shives. All jokes aside, the internet should not be regulated. Not to the extent where the government is involved, because then they start to decide what people can and can't see. There are, and the article references it, going to be people who see things that are going to distress them, and there will inevitably be a consequence from that. The individual case is not reflective of the wider audience. And those who take criticism online it's victim blaming, isn't it? To say that you put yourself out there. When you say something that the majority disagree with, you're going to get a backlash. It's not your fault. It is called criticism. When someone then, and there will always be people that do it, go out of their way to then decide, I don't want you on the internet anymore, I'm going to dox and bully you. Doxing bad. Don't do it. The person who does that, they deserve the backlash they get for doxing. By and large, the internet does not tolerate such acts. Internet has its own form of justice, if you will. But for the most part, this idea to give Ofcom more powers to regulate the internet is bad, and I would stand firmly against it. It is one of a number of policies Boris is going to enact that I don't agree with, and I would sorely hope it gets revised and possibly rejected, but unlikely since he has such a majority. More so if you include the fact he's just reshuffled his cabinet quite drastically, something which I will address tomorrow.